One common goal that most documentary filmmakers attempt to achieve is to persuade their audience, whether it's making the audience believe in the world they are presented with, or by convincing them that the facts that are given are true. The social actors in the documentaries are also given an opportunity to use their rhetoric and body language to convey their points of view. By limiting the information given to the audience, filmmakers are able to guide us through the film and only see what they want us to see. In addition, filmmakers can use the quality of their production to enhance their persuasion and also use editing to drive their point further into our minds. In the fall of 1997, Nicholas Barclay was finally found inside a telephone booth in Spain after being missing for 3 years. His sister brought him back home in Texas, and Nicholas, his mother, and sister all lived happily ever after. Oh, only that Nicholas has brown eyes instead of blue, brown hair instead of blonde, has a heavy French accent
It's nothing, which was, they saw my eyes.
instead of an American one, and the whole thing is tangled into a murder mystery. But never mind, let's rewind that a little bit. Directed by Bart Layton, The Imposter is a 2012 expository documentary that centers on one key idea: persuasion. Instead of revealing to the audience that the boy they found in Spain ended up being an imposter as a gigantic twist placed towards the end of the film, Layton reveals to us right from the start that the kid is the imposter, and these people are just recollecting their memories. The imposter himself is none other than Frédéric Bourdin, a man that was exceptional at creating fake identities for himself, and is also really good at lying on the spot.
When the police arrive, I have immediately to put into their mind that they have a kid in front of them, not an adult. So it was very important for me to behave like one.
Layton wants his audience to experience directly how convincing the imposter is. His secret:
I thought, let's see if it's him.
he has the imposter look directly to the camera while he talks and has everyone else looking to the side or as someone behind the camera. This simple choice allows the audience to experience firsthand how convincing his stories are. Let's take a look at a statement that Bourdin says is true.
Daughter, do you remember that? Do you remember that? Do you remember that? Over and over and over again. She wanted to put it in my head. She wanted to put it in my head so I would never forget. She just could not say it's not Nicholas. Did she believe it or not? If you asked me, I would say no. Not for a second did she believe I was her brother.
And now let's see a family member try to speak the truth.
I lied about stealing. And so that's why I failed. I didn't lie about anything to do with Nicholas. It was the other questions.
It's not quite the same. Looking at our subjects is a great way to get our points across, as opposed to not looking, because looking at the subject makes us seem more confident. Therefore, making the subject think that we know what we are saying. There is another movie that uses this method with a similar effect.
Closer.
The Science of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme, and with cinematography by Tak Fujimoto, filmed the film's antagonist, Hannibal Lecter, as portrayed by Anthony Hopkins, in an eye-level close-up as Hopkins stares directly at the camera. Not only does this make the audience feel uneasy, but narratively, it also shows how he is able to persuade the protagonist, Clarice Starling, portrayed by Jodie Foster. These methods can be used to great effect to allow the audience to experience Bourdin's persuasiveness themselves. Layton's choice to make Bourdin look at the camera also shows that Bourdin seems like a man who has nothing to hide. In contrast, most of the family members in the documentary look off-screen and never at the camera. This staging device is manipulative, making Bourdin seem like he has nothing to hide and makes the family members appear to be secretive. Thematically, the film The Imposter is very much like Bourdin himself in terms of how calculated it engages the audience with its tools of persuasion. The director is very aware of this and takes this opportunity to make his audience think that perhaps the family really did murder their child. While this all makes a compelling case for the film being persuasive, Layton and his editor takes it a step further and utilizes film editing to add to the immersion and persuasion in the film. For example, this film includes faithful reenactments and high production values intercut between the interviews. One trick the film will use is to have the actors in the reenactments sync their voice to the person that is being interviewed, specifically Bourdain.
I wasn't the one who was telling them I've been sexually abused. I made them ask me that. By my attitude.
On top of that, they will do this.
I told them every time that there was a policeman from Spain called Jonathan Dorian, that we had found a kid. We're sure that he's from the States, but we don't know where.
How long ago was this?
He's been maybe missing for a few years.
This is an effect called a high-pass filter for audio, which is basically an audio effect to make voices sound like they're coming through a phone. All of this comes together and makes the audience become more immersed in the scene. The audience becomes aware of these effects, and it makes them imagine more of how the scene could possibly have gone down. Not to mention the quality of these reenactments surely adds to the director's credibility and how he is clearly capable of making a movie. But of course, Bart Layton and his crew can't take all the credit for the persuasiveness of this film. The imposter himself has a few tricks up his sleeves. Frederick has a certain kind of rhetoric that makes the audience think twice. In the book Introduction to Documentary, written by Bill Nichols, rhetoric may be separated into three main divisions: deliberative, judicial or historical, and commemorative. The imposter uses judicial rhetoric to persuade the audience. Judicial rhetoric is the domain of accusing or defending previous actions, where guilt or innocence is often at stake. Frederick accuses the family by directly saying to the audience,
I didn't need to be Columbo to put all the pieces together. They killed him. Some of them did it, some of them knew of it, and some of them choose to ignore it.
Bourdain uses pronouns such as they and them, directly placing the blame on the family members. By making it a statement,
They killed him.
it automatically makes Bourdain sound more confident, thus making his claims feel more believable. When it comes to making an expository documentary, a director should always have this question in his head. How can I make this persuasive? Director Bart Layton, Frederick Bourdain, and everyone behind the scenes all came together to create an impressive piece of documentary that not only was persuasive in and of itself, but was also a documentary where persuasiveness was ingrained into its story. The Imposter made people question what's right and what's wrong, and for a second, the audience might be fully convinced that what Bourdain was saying was true. It is only when the audience begins to think about Bourdain as a character that they can break out of that persuasion. After all, this is not the first time he has made such accusations.
Even from behind bars, he continued to lie to families of other missing children. From this phone in his cell, Bourdain made hundreds of collect calls, claiming to have information about lost children. Why did you do that? You didn't have any information, did you? No. But you get on his phone, and you're calling all over the world.
Yes.
What are you doing?
He's a habitual liar, and it blows my mind that anybody could take anything that is said out of his mouth as truth.